with me starting to play a little late, I felt like I still had more to learn and I had more growth in me. And so I kind of took that as my focus point. What I did last year was great, but I want to build on that. Personally, I just think I love winning. I just do. I thrive on it, and I love being a part of a winning team.
Imagine winning an award as the top athlete at the Division I college sport level. Now imagine doing that twice. Welcome to Grateful and Full of Greatness. I'm your host, Mark Glicini. On this podcast, I sit down with guests who, in my opinion, live their lives with the pursuit of greatness in mind. This platform allows me to discuss and explain the strategies that go into reaching peak performance. This is episode 69. My guest today is Kristen Kjellman Marshall, two-time Tewaaraton award winner, three-time national champion and midfielder of the year, four-time All-American at Northwestern University. Kristen went on to win a gold medal in the 2009 World Cup for Team USA and was recently inducted into the Hall of Fame. I'm not too sure what else I need to say about how elite Kristen is and remains. One of the best players to ever play lacrosse, and now a coach and role model for the next generation. I cannot wait for Kristen to share her why and how with our community. When multiple people I admire ask me, why has Kristen Kjellman not been on yet? I should listen. So without further ado, Kristen, thank you for being here.
Thanks, Mark. I'm excited and humbled. Appreciate the intro.
Of course, it's well deserved. And I want to start right inside of your time at Northwestern. You have a breakout season, your freshman year, and then you just keep going to another level, sustaining excellence, winning championships. How were you able to do that?
It started from top down, certainly. We had great leadership in place, especially, our administration. Mark Murphy was there. He's the president of the Packers now, and he was instrumental, I think, in supporting our program and supporting Kelly and Scott. And, Kelly and Scott were just amazing. They brought us along. They, taught us lessons in sort of chipping away day by day. And I think most importantly, just got our group to rally around her vision and just the basics of working hard and reaching our goals as a team and kind of not thinking about exterior things, really focusing on ourselves. And I think she knew, she had a special group collectively if we could kind of work the pieces together. So we just chipped away at it and, worked our way through some things in my freshman year. And I think we ended up doing better than a lot of us expected. We lost a few games, but they were all close. And our loss to Virginia in the quarterfinals my freshman year, I think was kind of a turning point for our team and our program and myself just in my confidence and being able to lead the team and be a major contributor in that way. So yeah, that was sort of the start of it and just kept it rolling. I think that loss in a way, we were upset about it, but it gave us a lot of confidence heading to 2026 or sorry, to 2025. And yeah, and then just, we're undefeated that season and kept it rolling.
Well, I mean, inside your story, when I was researching, I'm like, how the heck is this freshman so empowered with that leadership mentality? Because you can meet a lot of people, boys and girls, coming into the college level, and there's a kind of an intimidation factor, or do I deserve to be here? And it seems like you stepped into that role really well and were ready to lead at such a young age. How so?
I credit our group of older players on the team, the seniors, and a lot of them were. It was a big junior class at the time. They empowered me and they were supportive, and I think that's what it takes. And certainly, maybe some of that came from the coaches as well. But they were incredible leaders, and we had a really strong class my freshman year and they were just amazing at being supportive of us, getting playing time and taking on some leadership roles on the field. And I mean, I look up to them. I looked up to them and still do. And I wholeheartedly believe that their empowerment of some of the younger players to be leaders was a reason for our success.
You talked about there was a turning point during a loss to Virginia, and that really resonates to me because there's so many times in the sport of lacrosse where you lose, but it just felt like a win, and it gives you more momentum. So it doesn't really mean that the outcome had anything to do with it. So going inside of that turning point, what do you think it was during that game against Virginia? Like you took a loss. Like how could that ever be a good thing? What was it about that loss that really resonated with you?
I think that whole year we had surprised people. I think, we surprised ourselves in a way. We knew we were great. We knew we had a ton of potential. And, going into that game, I think we knew we were capable, but it was still going to be a steep climb. And once we got rolling with them and we were battling and I think it just gave us confidence. And even though the outcome in the end wasn't what we wanted um, and I think we still feel like we could have won, it felt like it did give us momentum and it gave us confidence and we were returning our pretty much our entire team the next year. So I think that was sort of a good feeling.
So I don't want to skip over it because it's just an amazing accomplishment. It sounded like when I was watching the video that Northwestern finally wins its championship with you having 5 goals in 2005 after decades of the program not having the win. How were you guys able to go back to back though? And then you actually had 3 national championship appearances in a row. Like the pressure, like wasn't that the pinnacle of the mountain? Like how do you not come back down off the mountain but yet stay there year after year, 2005 through 7?
I think honestly that was the coolest part of my whole journey was in lacrosse and at Northwestern was being able to rise up that in that next year and then my senior year as well. Um, I think we all kind of came back the next year that fall and kind of looked at Kelly like what are we gonna do? How do like we needed her guidance and she just level set us and we reset and it was I think she just does such a good job of pulling from the past and giving us confidence from what we've done, but also just constantly reminding us that, nothing you did yesterday really matters. It's about what you're doing now and what we're going to do tomorrow. And so she just was so good at instilling that in us and but also reminding us of like how it felt and how badly we all want to get back to that point. So it was a good she had a good balance with us on working hard daily and not taking anything for granted or anything in the past for granted, but reach like working towards our goals.
Yeah, I mean, you could have totally just been like, forget last year. It didn't matter at all. But it sounds like she brought that into that next year in 2006, 2007. What you bring in my mind is there's this Netflix special called Coach's Rules for Life. And Jill Ellis, who is the U.S. women's national soccer team coach, talks about this whole experience of mountaintops are small and the air is thin because you're not supposed to dwell on the top of a mountain. And it's a cool little metaphor that she uses. I want to give you space to talk about Kelly Amonte Hiller. I think that not enough the world talks about her. I don't know her personally, but she just keeps sustaining greatness, right? Which is what this podcast's all about. So, what would you say about her? I mean, you already whispered about her twice in some answers, but if I was to talk about just her, what comes to mind?
Oh gosh. I mean, so much. I've learned so much from her when I was playing and, outside of playing. She is a competitor. She's the ultimate competitor. She's relentless and focused and driven. But she does all the little things. I think that's what I found to be super compelling about her is that just in practice maybe she would stop practice for something that at the time it felt so small and in the moment you're like oh we know and are like really that extra sprint like we get it and you don't think about it in the moment and you kind of sometimes get frustrated maybe with it but then it makes sense in the end and it's all the little details. She would often talk about her time to coach is during the week. It's the preparation and she's like I'm leaving it to you guys and obviously you see that she does a ton of coaching during the game but her mentality is like I'm going to get you focused for this game and get that plan dialed in. And I trust you guys to follow through with it. And so yeah, she's just everything from being organized and disciplined and working hard has always resonated with me.
This episode is brought to you by Whoop. For the last several years, I have not taken this off my wrist. Okay, maybe I have, but it was just to change the colors. I truly trust Whoop. It's a wearable that lets me know about my resting heart rate variability, respiratory rate, and so much more. I wake up in either the green, yellow, or red, and I know if I should prioritize training and working out harder or I need to prioritize recovery. I was always looking for ways to optimize and take my performance and training to the next level. Whoops helped me do that. If you're looking to get started, here's a free wristband and a free first month. And if you don't like it, you can return it at no cost. All you have to do is go to the following: join.whoop.com/MGPP. That's join.whoop.com/MGPP. Mark Glicini Peak Performance, my clients, I trust Whoop. You should too. Enjoy. Let me know how you get on. Now, back to the episode. So when I'm getting a presentation to a team, I have them take their fists and I have them bang on the table and I say, do you hear that? That's matter. That's science. But what we're going to talk about today from psychology is what matters. And I think when you were talking about her being so specific about the details, one of the things I say is, the saying, the devil is in the details, but I always say, so is God, the ultimate good. And I think it's really cool that she stops practice, which could be such a dread, and be like, are you serious? We already know, but she makes things matter. And that is super cool. When I was listening to this part of your speech in the 2005, you were super humble. You had 5 goals in the championship, but you're like, it was a team effort and all that stuff. And I just really appreciated that humility that I saw. And it seems like you have, everybody talks about your humility. Where does that humility come from, Kristen? This whole idea that like you have this obviously competitive fire about you, but it seems like a student of the game, a student and you're always learning and getting better. Where would you point to that humility coming from?
I think just different parts of my life, coming into college, my family, my parents just, both worked really hard. And I think, kept my brother and I pretty humble and then I think it's just Kelly's approach to our team and always that it was team first and I always respected that and I appreciated, I think our juniors and seniors and those leaders giving me the ability to lead and play a key role in the team. Like I wanted to make sure that I respected that and I valued that and didn't want to take credit because it truly was a team effort and especially that '05 season. I mean, we had so many pieces and layers to that team that made it work and made us successful um, and so I don't know, it's just always been instilled in me and a part of me that, especially in a team sport, that's just how it's got to be.
I want to ask you one more question about Northwestern during that time in 2005 through 7. When I was at Yale, I felt like really early on, the talent level wasn't what it was in 2018 when the men won a championship. I felt like in the early 2010s, like they were really working to get the talent in the recruitment. Do you feel that your team was super, super talented or more scrappy or more athletic? How would you describe the team that you had during that time?
Yeah, I mean, we were sort of a part of the rebuilding blocks when the program got reinstated. And so Kelly, she did an incredible job recruiting, but we weren't the top recruits in the country. And so she found athletic, savvy kids who maybe had different skill sets, who she knew she could sort of mold pieces of our games together and be creative with our assets. And I mean, she saw the Custer twins running on the lake who had stepped away from the basketball team and they joined and were, two of the best defenders in the country on our team. So I think, no, we were not sort of the top players in the country, but I think one of the best skill sets of Kelly and Scott is their development of their players. And so, a bunch of us who came in and just started playing right away, she took us, from 0 to 60 pretty quick and then layered in pieces around us with talent, specific maybe skill sets of other people who had talent. So
The two players that you mentioned came over from basketball, and I'll turn it to you. From everything I read, you were a multiple sport athlete growing up. Could you shed some light about early Kristen, what she was like? Was she like the similar player that you were when you got to college, or was there this huge progression in your confidence and the makeup of you as an athlete?
yeah, I mean, I loved sports as a kid, anything I could play. I grew up playing soccer, softball, basketball, just everything, skiing, gymnastics, and I believe that it was all the fundamentals of the combination of those that helped me become a great athlete. I think I have maybe had some intangibles as well, just in terms of some ruthlessness or aggression, things like that, and it's maybe not as teachable, but in combination with some of the athleticism, I think it helped to propel me once I picked up lacrosse, which was a little later. I didn't start playing until eighth grade. And actually, in my Hall of Fame speech in January, I had said I wanted to thank the sport of softball for being incredibly boring for my parents to watch. So that was one of the reasons why I picked up a stick from a local coach who was encouraging me. So once I did, it was sort of like a straight fast track. I loved the pace of it. I loved running and I loved the aggressiveness and um, so it was an easy transition for me, especially from playing a lot of basketball and soccer and those side to side sports. And I know the world's transition more towards specializing and certainly the talent level has come so far, but I still try to encourage kids as long as you can to keep playing some of those sports that translate to lacrosse.
You had me laughing there for a second because I still remember in fifth grade, I have my left glove on in center field baseball, and my dad was like, "Why is Mark picking at his pants?" And it's because my sunflower seeds were in the back opposite pocket, so I literally had to go across, and he was like it was just too slow. So I'm
Yeah.
totally with you on that. Going towards back to you personally, you start to have some success, and then you win the Tewaaraton, if I'm correct, as a sophomore. How are you managing all the expectations? Because there's a lot of athletes that I work with now that word comes up a lot. I just have so much expectation, so much pressure, so much attention, and this would be absolute gold to hear how somebody like you handled that.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it was the people who I surrounded myself with and, you know, especially just going back to Kelly and Scott again, I think instilling confidence in me and really just taking it day by day. Like how can I not think about the future but just get better every day? And I think a part of it with me starting to play a little late, I felt like I still had more to learn and I had more growth in me. And so I kind of took that as my focus point. What I did last year was great, but I want to build on that. And so, when Courtney Custer left and she took the draw, I was like, I'm gonna add that into my arsenal. I'm gonna play more defense, go straight mid, do things a little differently, and just try to take it game by game and not think about anything else. And it's hard, obviously. You know how many goals you scored, you know what you did last year, but um, just focusing on trying to get the win was the most important thing and get better.
Well, there comes the humility again, because the way I define it is what you don't know is more important than what you do know. So I love this whole thing that you're adding these layers to your game. There's something from the neuroscience that says focus is a choice, but refocus is a skill. And what that means is you get to choose what you focus on, and it sounds like you were always focused on getting better. But it's really hard when everything's pulling at you. Like, no, don't you see your points where you were compared to last year, and you bring your attention back to getting better. It's not necessarily the easiest thing, but I love that the expectation that you had was about yourself rather than the expectations out there. You keep coming back to these people that have influenced you, so I want to go there. And then you mentioned your parents and brother being very early on influential. Who were some of your earlier influences before Kelly and Scott, like when you were in high school or earlier, that kind of gave you a love for sport or otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a fairly small town in Westwood, Mass, and it's kind of a smaller community, but a big sports community. And so I grew up going to the Westwood High School basketball games as a kid, or and soccer games, and so those were, there weren't just like one or two people, but I vividly remember the moments of like going to their games and being on the sidelines and in the stands and watching them play, you know, several seasons in a row. And so they were sort of my role models, and were great with us. And a lot of times, I don't know, the community there did a really good job of like passing it down and coming to kind of some of the youth events. And so I think that was some of the biggest inspiration for me was, in my town, a lot of the high school players who went on to, we had a great basketball program. A lot of them went on to play in college. And so yeah, I took a lot of inspiration and just wanting to be great and wanting to succeed and make a state championship and do all the things that they were doing.
Amazing. I probably said this on several podcasts now, but Stephen Sondheim, one of the greatest musical composers of all time, when someone asked him, "How do you create such great music?" He said, "I listen." And I took that into sport because I think one of the biggest things is observation, right? Just kind of watching your role models all the time. I think we can always remember being a kid or you at Westwood High School being like, I kind of want to be like that, but myself and in different ways. Going to the connection piece by the time that you're in high school, was that a vivid time in your life, or was it not until Northwestern that things just started to get very climactic and fireworks? Could you talk a little bit about your high school career?
Yeah, I feel like my high school sports career was a huge like uplifting point for me because I had such a talented class and group around me, kind of above and below. And so we kind of came in and played, we played soccer, we played lacrosse, and we played basketball together and just excelled and pushed each other. And I think it helped all of us in our avenues to the next level. We made it to semifinals in soccer a couple years. We won two state championships in basketball, and won 78 games in a row and won a state championship in lacrosse. And so a lot of that, we just fueled each other and pushed each other, which I think made us all better athletes. So I'm really fortunate for that time.
Super cool. I mean, what's coming to mind to ask you is just why Northwestern, right? Why did the Westwood High School gal, is that where you went to school?
Yeah,
Go
yeah.
out and go out there. Why did you make that decision?
I was lucky that Kelly was also from Massachusetts
Oh, okay.
and came back to Milton Academy, which was pretty close by, to run some camps. And I had, just picked the sport up a year before, was loving it, wanted to get better, and went to her camp one summer, I think after my freshman year, um and just I loved everything about her coaching style, her philosophy, just watching her coach, the players who were there at camp, um, and I kind of knew it was just like an instant kind of connection. And I didn't know if I'd be good enough. I had no idea, but I just knew that all of a sudden kind of became a goal and a dream of mine, would be to play for her. Not knowing if I would meet the criteria for the recruiting process for her. And luckily I did, that next year. But, I looked at other places, went to a few schools for visits, but I was lucky, I guess, that I just knew that was the place for me.
I know this is going to sound like a very woo-woo question, but I think it's very important in psychology. You kind of said there was just something, there was this instant connection. I just want to pull on that thread on what you mean by that, because I look at my recruiting process. I chose the coach as well to play for Andy Shea at Yale. I felt the same way. I just wanted to play for him. So what is that? What would you say? Why was that? If you had to unpack that.
I've talked about this with Kelly. I remember a cool moment at camp, and she was actually training for the World Cup team and that year, that summer, and was just still playing. She was super young, and she came in to play one of our scrimmages at the end of camp and matched up against me on the draw. And we took the draw. She wanted to her team. We ran down. I was playing D, and she scored, or her team scored, and I kind of like turned around. I was looking around. I walked, and all of a sudden she's sprinting back to the 50-yard line to get reset for the next draw. So I was like, all right, I gotta get on my horse and like try to keep up with her. So the rest of the game, I think we both stayed in, and I was just hauling it with her back and forth the whole field, and I would try to beat her back. I would sprint with her back to the circle. And it's just like that's such a core memory for me, and it's actually something I tried to do unless my team needed to huddle. I would try to beat the other team back through college back to the draw circle. So kind of a neat connection point, and just we weren't even really talking, but I just knew that like this is the kind of player I want to be, and I want to learn from her more. So.
Ralph Waldo Emerson once said, "Your actions speak so loudly, I cannot hear a word you're saying." And then when you say that, I think about Rafael Nadal because he's always trying to beat the person to the baseline and be ready first. I think this is really impactful, like just because there's young athletes that listen to this and they're looking for like, how am I going to make certain decisions? And I think it really is this idea of who before do, like who do you want to be, and then the do and the actions will follow, but also like who are you admiring? So thank you for sharing that story because I could see how you're lighting up just sharing it, that whole idea of going back and forth. Now there's a saying that when it comes to people that are super, super successful and don't stop, there's one thing that they don't have, and that's enough. So let me ask you, as you were going through like your college career, I guess, like success after success after success, what was fueling you to keep going? I know you mentioned that you wanted to just get better at the game, but when is enough there? Or you felt like, no, I just can keep going to another level?
Personally, I just think I love winning. I just do. I thrive on it, and I love being a part of a winning team. So like personally, I
Mm,
love when I can play well and like help my lead my
mm.
team to a win, but then just being a part of having been a part of winning teams and championships, I think I just wanted more and more, and I knew, at the time we were far from an Olympic place, and there wasn't really a pro league, and the national team was, we didn't play that often. So I think also I had that in my mind, like, I don't know how long I'm going to be able to play this sport I
Mm.
love so much, and um, just wanted to do it as much as I could and for as long as possible.
It's fascinating. I had an individual on here, Tony Holler, who won a Hall of Fame coach for track and field, and he talks about dopamine a lot. The hormone that releases for it gives us reckless confidence and an expectance of something in the future. And he was sharing with the audience that it comes from three things: a good amount of adequate sleep, sunlight, and nature. But the third one is winning, right? And it's just winning like the little things, but also like the big ones. And if you do that, winning begets more winning, which is super cool that I took from your story. Now, I have to ask you this question because it keeps coming to my mind. You said earlier that there was a lot of things about you about being part of a team, but then you said you had this kind of like ruthlessness and an aggression that you really had. Would you say that that was taught to you, or you kind of always had it personality and naturally?
Honestly, I think more, I think I was born with it. There's a video of me as a kid. I was maybe 3 years old that always resonates, where I was standing on the stoop to our door, and there was a huge bush like right next to it, and my dad threw me a football when I was standing up on the top of the patio, and it was going into the bush, and I dove into the bush to catch the ball. And he was like, he in that moment, he also thought, wow, okay, this kid's competitive and just wanted to catch this football, and it was all like scratched up, and so like I think about that, and just I must have had it, and just seeing old like soccer videos and things like that, where I just wanted the ball and I wanted to be in the mix, and would kind of do anything for it. And certainly it comes with the other end of like crying after losses and things like that, where I just was super competitive, and that has its faults as well. But I think it was something I grew up with, and then sort of learned to like harness and use that as a strength as I got into it super competitively.
So cool. And thank you so much for sharing the story. Usually candles or flames die out, but it seems like your fire went to a roaring blaze, so much so that when you're no longer with your Northwestern teammates and you're training for the 2009 World Cup, alone, like solo, like nobody like rah rah, let's go, Kristen, as much, right? There's probably still some people in your corner there, while you're working a full-time job. So could you talk to me about that mental and physical discipline that you kept?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think that was I think I'm the most proud of myself in, that year, just in terms of having to do, kind of what you just said. I was in Chicago, and I mean, Kelly and Scott were amazing. They invited me to come, practice with the team anytime at Northwestern, but it was tough. It was still an hour away, and I was working full time for Nike and traveling, and so I couldn't get there that often. But yeah, I mean, just it's a full switch from having a huge supportive team and coaches and a training staff to then I was living alone and traveling for work, and it was just a 365, just trying to figure out every day how I was going to train, and if there was snow on the ground, could I find somewhere to sprint outside? And so it took a lot of adjusting, and I think luckily I used a lot of lessons I learned from college, and just trying to plan and be organized and disciplined and how I was going to get things done. And I think that discipline and organization is what helped me to be successful and get in shape, because it was a different time where we didn't have the full like a full support. US programs didn't have, people reaching out to us daily, sending us instructions on what we should be doing. It was very independent, and then you'd come together on a weekend and expect to be in the best shape, in your best shape. So it was certainly a challenge, and one I'm proud of, and it was a learning a curve to get there, but couldn't have done it without the lessons from Northwestern.
So I do want to ask you about challenge, right? Because not too many listeners can relate to the two-time Tewaaraton challenge. Was that one of your biggest challenges throughout your arc that you would point to, or was it something different where you kind of had to, um, like you said, learning curve, adjust, adapt? Would you point to that being one of the most challenging eras?
Yeah, I think that definitely was, in terms of just a life adjustment. I think while I was playing, and I didn't talk to this earlier, but just going from being sort of new and undiscovered and up and coming as a part of the team to being the most targeted player, and getting face guarded every game, and having having that target on your back, that was also a huge shift from sort of like my sophomore to junior year. um, I was a whole new person. People knew my number, my name, all that stuff. So um, that was also, I think that was the biggest hurdle for me while I was playing. And then sort of meant more like mentally was that hurdle after playing, and sort of like, okay, now how do I keep building and doing this, and continuing this journey on my own.
Did you ever think like I'll just quit, or like that was never even an option in your head?
It wasn't an option at that time. I had gone out and tried out for the 2005 team and didn't make it. And I felt like, at the time there weren't any college players who made the World Cup team. And I felt like I could have gone further in that tryout process. And so I was really driven to try to be a part of the program. And I thought, if I don't make it, who knows, maybe that's it for me. Maybe that's a sign, and I'll harness my game in other ways. But I was fortunate, and I made the team, and it was also a standing team at the time, so you had to try out every year to be a part of the standing US program, and then that World Cup year every 4 years. So I made it for several years and the World Cup year, which was a dream come true. And and kind of decided, I think it was played another year after the World Cup and had just decided, I think it's time for me to focus on my career. And so that was also a really tough decision as well, saying
So
goodbye.
before we move on to that part where we say goodbye, I do want to ask you about the 2009, right? Such a highlight, and I'm sure there's a lot listeners can learn from being part of such a special, talented leader where everybody's like the same, right? Nobody's looking at the world from an average, mediocre lens, but really wanting to be great. So wherever you feel like taking us, what was it like being part of that 2019?
It was truly incredible. I think from the start, one of the coolest things is you look up to all these players who you play against for so long. And for 4 years I'd battle against a lot of these girls who were amazing. And at the time, there wasn't social media at the time. So now a lot of college players, they know each other. They've been to events together and they sync up on social media. But at the time it was like you play against them and you're competing hard and you're battling and you don't think you like each other. And but you respect each other. And I respected the games of so many of and just was so excited to be able to play with them and be on their side and play together. And so just forming those relationships with all those girls who I had played against was really neat and really cool. And I've maintained a lot of those relationships as well. And so that from the start was, one of the best parts. And then just playing with the best people in the country, and figuring out, okay, I thought I elevated my game, but how do I do it again? And I think them pushing me and playing with me helped to do that. And I was lucky enough to play with a couple of teammates from Northwestern as well, which was really cool because we could keep some of that in sync. Um and and then obviously we were in Prague that year for the World Cup and had some good competition. I mean, we had two, I think two one goal games with Australia, including the finals. And so yeah, I mean, just representing the country was, as a kid, it's like something you think about, but it seems so far off to be like a tangible goal. So it's more this like surreal dream that kind of came true. And yeah, it's just amazing. Like having so many family come over and friends and um just yeah, something I'll always remember.
Amazing. There's a C.S. Lewis quote that I share all the time about friendship. I think it's the best definition of friendship, and it's, "What? You too? I thought I was the only one." And I think that when you start to see these people that you don't necessarily like, but you respect, and then you're with them and you get to know them, they're like, "Oh, they're human and they're just like me." And birds of a feather certainly flock together. You mentioned, the social media and how the aspects have changed, and I think with constant noise out there, I hope that, messages like this can be something that rise to the top. So for a young student athlete, whether they're in high school or college, that's listening to this, and this might take a moment because I'm going to ask you a tough question about like a misconception where people think right now that this is important, but it's not as important. What would you really point to that you hope that a student athlete that's listening to this, they should be focusing on this because this is not as important?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is focusing on yourself. Especially with social media and how many outlets there are. I think there's so many comparables and you're constantly like, who are they training with? What extra things are they doing? Who's doing what? And I think just maintaining that confidence in yourself and trusting in that, hey, this is my process. And certainly social media is amazing for knowledge and getting inspiration from, people who are doing other things. I think that's why I post a lot of my trainings and just try to give girls everywhere some additional um lessons and inspiration. But sometimes it can be swung as like I should be doing that or I need to do that to be successful, and that's not the case. So I think, yeah, I think focusing on yourself and what you need to do, and setting, set your own goals and expectations for yourself.
Amazing. In sports psychology, one of the saddest things that I research is transition. It's very hard for a lot of pro athletes, specifically in the top four sports where they're going from, NFL player, the average career is like 3.7 years. So they're going from making millions of dollars and then they have to settle back down, right, into something else that's like more stable and long term. There's a poem about that, to the athlete dying young. But like there's also other transitions, whether it's military or empty nesting mom, right? It's very hard to go through these transitions. So I have a lot of empathy. What I want to ask you is kind of a two-part question, which has a lot to do with the transition, but also you brought up your training that you're doing for the next generation, which I just want you to highlight and talk about like the messages that you repeat to them. Maybe it's some that you just said, that this is your process and focus on yourself. But was that transition easy or hard for you? Getting away from the game, going to Nike and then training and coaching, was that easy or hard for you?
It was hard, yeah, at first. I'll be honest, at heart, it was even first to go back to games and to watch them. I mean, as much as I like adored the, people that came up behind me and wanted them to be successful and loved, going back to the Final Four, it was so hard. I wanted to be on the field and I actually didn't think it would be that hard. And it took me a couple years to sort of um figure out, okay, how do that was then and this is now, and like, what's my new focus? And so coaching and training and being able to sort of share my gift and my talents with others, um, helps me to channel it in a new way. And yeah, and I kind of continue to do that now. And I train and coach a lot of girls locally, especially who, I like to try to take on girls who I feel like can transcend into the next level, and try to find, skill sets that they have, that we can really bring up and unleash. And so I've loved doing that. And, I have sort of things I do to break out of, their comfort zone and push them in different ways that they might get pushed, by their local coaches or club teams. And so I take pride in elevating some of the New England girls around here.
I mean, as you should. And you might be like, Mark, why are you asking me this question? I told you it was a hard time in my life, but I think it's for the listener who can really learn how you did it, right? So when you were going through that transition, those top four sports that I was talking about, on average, it takes them 8 years to transition, and most never do because they have too narrow of an identity. And it's really hard. So the reason why I'm coming back to it is you were able to do it, right? It was really hard at first to go back to those games, but it sounds like it hasn't taken you decades, to transition on. So I guess what would be your messaging there? Like, what's your encouragement for that person that's listening, that's trying to transition, and it's just super hard for them?
Yeah, I think especially if you're in that wheelhouse, then you're super goal oriented and you thrive on um successes and reaching new heights. And so I was fortunate to be at Nike, a great company after college, and I think that was a good thing for me. I worked with a bunch of former athletes. It was hard, but it was good for me. It was a good learning curve. And so I tried to channel a lot into my work and trying to do the best I could, in my field. Um, and so that was good for me. I think just like having different focuses, getting into coaching, um, and just staying competitive, running, just signing up for half marathons, doing things I could um, to sort of like still be, I guess, like proud of myself and find ways to be able to like set little goals and keep my mind focused on different things I wanted to achieve.
I mean, the book that comes to mind is this book called like The Second Mountain, and it's usually about getting to the top of a mountain, and then you say, "Oh, there's another mountain," and you come down, and you like go after that one, which is really cool. And I'm right there with you. And one of the ways in which I look to spin it to the positive when people are like, "I'm having these different problems transitioning," your short-term problems are your short-term goals if you want choose to look them that way. And if you stack those like problem solving, then you get a lot of encouragement. I want to talk only a few more questions. Your coaching style, right? So like we talked about Kelly, we talked about Scott. What is your coaching style? Are you like the rah rah like, or are you more quiet? Could you explain what you're like to the ones that you're training?
Yeah, I'm definitely more quiet, I would say. I try to, I think I take on some, I'm sure I take on some of Kelly's attributes, but I try to really instill confidence. Sometimes subtly. I love kind of coaching one-on-one. So whether it's breaking stuff down, during a practice or pulling a kid aside or having a kid come to me and ask a question, like I love empowering girls one-on-one for what they can do or in small groups. And certainly I can get rah-rah if I need to in a big group. And there's times when that happens. And I think that makes it kind of impactful too when I get to those spots. But yeah, I think definitely more of a and maybe that's how Kelly was with me too. And just sort of trying to like pump me up in our one-on-one meetings or on the sideline um and so that sort of resonated with me, that style of positivity, definitely like very positive reinforcement and confidence building.
This episode is brought to you by Thorne Health Tech. Which company do you trust when it comes to your health? Thorne Health Tech provides over 190 supplements and products necessary to avoid deficiencies and optimize mental acuity, holistic health, speed, strength, and conditioning. For years, I've taken their amino complex, whey protein, and elite multi AM and PM vitamins. I'm proud to represent Thorne. Why? Because their quality of products is the highest, as well as purity and potency of every supplement. They're backed by the Mayo Clinic. The raw materials that go into the supplements are NSF certified for sport, as well as tested and retested to meet Olympic standards. So if you're looking to optimize your performance and get to the next level, whether it's to meet your protein thresholds or just optimize holistically, trust Thorne. To get started, enter your email and enjoy 25% off at thorne.com/u/Mark Glicini. That's thorne.com/u/Mark Glicini. Enjoy. Now, back to the episode. This quote has kept coming to my mind, so I need to say it now. There's a quote in psychology that I transferred into sports psychology. The quote is, safety is not the absence of threat, but the presence of connection. And I've made that into sports psychology. Confidence is not the absence of threat, but the presence of connection. And really what that means, if I used to give you a story, is we can all remember being 5, 6, 7 years old and there's thunder and lightning outside and we're scared. And the thunder and lightning doesn't go away, but when somebody holds us, we're all good. And I think that that's all we really need. You use this word of support and connection, and look at the words you're using. You're looking to instill confidence. You're empowering them, put them in power. You're encouraging them. You're encouraging them, like put encouraging them. It's super important. And I think, what you were talking about, focus on yourself, but also finding that kind of like support system, the people that are going to bolster you and take you to that next level. So I guess now you have so many irons in the fire, and I want you to speak about what you're doing now. But what's your next Tewaaraton or Hall of Fame thing now? Like, what are your sights on goal wise and attacking day to day?
Yeah, right now, I'm working for a sports video software company called We Played Sports, which fills up a lot of my time. An amazing company, run by a former athlete, Paul Zukowskis, who played football at BC. And I coach in the spring at Phillips Exeter Academy. I run a few camps in the summer, lots of clinics and some of that training we talked about as well. So I try to keep a good fill of lacrosse, which keeps me motivated, and then also fulfilled with ups and downs and challenges and rewards of working for a startup. So I am always kind of looking for the next thing. I am in the middle of I wrote a children's book a few years ago, just more sort of a simple like ABCs for girls lacrosse, and I recently wrote sort of a next next level, next step above that about a girl who tries out for our first lacrosse team. And so that's in the works. And hopefully we'll be coming out this next year. So that's sort of been my like one little thing on the side right now, but we'll see. We'll see what the next big goal is. Not sure yet.
Awesome. And I'll put We Played Sports in the show notes because there's so many athletes and coaches that listen to this. Giving you the microphone one last time, I typically ask the individual how they define greatness because that's what this is all about. But I want to put a spin on this. I want, because you've written the ABCs for girls lacrosse, what's one piece of advice Kristen would give to younger Kristen, right? If you were looking back at yourself in the high school or college level, trying to take on your journey again, looking back on it, what do you wish you knew then that you do know now?
Um, I think the biggest thing is to for me, I wish I was more of a sponge. I think I was always a really good listener, but I think I could have been more of a sponge to outside elements. I always soaked up like what my coaches told me. But I think sometimes I was stubborn in certain ways where my dad might, I remember my dad being like, you should read this book or, do calf races on the stairs because that'll help you. And sometimes I think I was a little stubborn and like, no, this is what my coach told me, or I think I know what I'm doing. Like this is what I should do. And so I think I probably could have been a little more open-minded to other things and just more learning from outside. Aspects of life to like help me be more of a whole athlete or whole person.
Outstanding. I mean, I think the stubbornness, there's your strengths and your weaknesses are the same. So I think you, as much as you want to be open-minded, I think the stubbornness got you a very long way. I want to give you the space here just to share your socials, like your social media and things like that, so athletes can follow you and see what you're up to. So please do.
Yeah, the biggest thing I really share is on Instagram. It's at Kristen Kjellman Lax. Um, so yeah, that'd be a good follow if you want to keep up with any current lacrosse training and info.
Well, Kristen, I will just, you're a remarkable person and player, and thank you very much for coming on here and sharing this because I think there's a lot of people, like I said, they're dealing with expectations, they're dealing with transition, they're dealing with trying to find how to ways to sustain that fire. And I think a lot of people that listen to this are going to give themselves more grace because they're going to say, okay, that's how she did it. And I hope people listen to this one with a pen out like I was. And thank you so much for your time. And you lived up to well beyond the hype that people that I admire said you should come on. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's great to be here.